Margaret Stevens had been a flight attendant for 32 years, and she thought she'd seen everything. The skies over coastal Maine had thrown their share of challenges her way: winter storms, mechanical issues, even the occasional unruly passenger. But nothing in her career had prepared her for what happened on that crisp October morning aboard Northeast Airlines Flight 2187. The day started routinely enough. Margaret went through her pre-flight checklist while watching passengers board the Boeing 737 at Portland International Jetport. Among them was a man who caught her attention, not because he seemed suspicious, but because he appeared so ordinary that it felt deliberate. He wore khakis and a plain blue sweater, carrying only a large rolling suitcase that he insisted on keeping in the cargo hold, despite plenty of overhead space. "Are you sure, sir?" Margaret had asked. "There's room up top?" "No, thank you," he'd replied with a tight smile. "I prefer it below." She would later learn his name was Robert Miller, recently released from Cumberland County Jail after serving time for illegal wildlife trafficking. The flight took off at 9:15 a.m. under clear autumn skies. Below them, the New England coastline stretched out like a watercolor painting, its trees ablaze with fall colors. Captain Sarah Anderson's voice came over the intercom, promising smooth sailing to their destination in Washington, D.C. That promise lasted exactly 47 minutes. Margaret was serving coffee to an elderly couple in row 14 when she first noticed something odd through the window. What looked like a small dark cloud appeared to be keeping pace with the aircraft. As she leaned closer to the plexiglass, the cloud resolved itself into hundreds of birds, mostly gulls and cormorants, species common to the Maine coast, but behaving in ways that defied explanation. "My word," whispered Dorothy Hamilton, the elderly passenger who had been watching with her. "I've never seen anything like it." Dorothy, a retired ornithologist from Bar Harbor, would later provide crucial testimony about what happened next. The birds didn't just follow the plane, they surrounded it in a coordinated dance that seemed impossible for wild creatures. They matched the aircraft's speed exactly, creating what looked like a living escort formation. Captain Anderson's voice crackled over the intercom again, this time with an edge of concern. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing an unusual situation with some local wildlife. As a precaution, we're going to adjust our altitude and heading." But the birds adjusted with them. Every banking turn, every attempt to climb or descend was matched by the swarm. Passengers pressed their faces against windows, phones recording what would soon become viral footage. The sky had darkened with wings and feathers, like something out of Hitchcock's nightmares. In row 27, Robert Miller sat absolutely still, his face ashen. His hands gripped the armrests so tightly his knuckles had turned white. He alone seemed to understand what was happening, though he wouldn't speak a word of it until much later. The first impact came at 10:17 a.m. A large herring gull was sucked into the left engine, causing a sound that Margaret would later describe as like a giant garbage disposal trying to chew up metal. The engine failed immediately, and the plane lurched sickeningly to one side. Captain Anderson, a 20-year veteran pilot with over 15,000 flight hours, kept remarkable composure. "This is Northeast 2187 declaring an emergency," she radioed to air traffic control. "We have lost one engine and are experiencing severe bird activity. Request immediate vectors to nearest airport." But the nearest airport was now 30 minutes away, and the birds showed no signs of dispersing. Worse, they seemed to be growing more aggressive, particularly around the cargo hold. The right engine was still functioning, but for how long? Captain Anderson made the difficult decision that would later be praised as the only choice that could have saved everyone aboard. She would attempt a water landing. The coast of Maine has no shortage of cold water, but finding a stretch smooth enough for an emergency landing required both skill and luck. They found it in a sheltered cove near Boothbay Harbor. Anderson brought the crippled aircraft down in a textbook water landing that would later earn her the Airline Pilots Association's Superior Airmanship Award. But their ordeal wasn't over. As passengers began evacuating onto life rafts, the birds attacked with renewed fury. They seemed particularly focused on the luggage compartment, diving at anyone who came near it. The crew quickly realized they needed to direct evacuees away from that section of the plane. "They're trying to tell us something," Dorothy Hamilton insisted as she was helped onto a Coast Guard rescue boat. "This isn't random aggression, it's protective behavior." She was right. When recovery teams finally managed to access the cargo hold, after using high-frequency deterrent devices to disperse the birds, they found Robert Miller's suitcase. Inside were dozens of sedated exotic birds, macaws, cockatoos, and several endangered species that had been stolen from their natural habitats. Some had begun to wake during the flight, their distress calls carrying through the cargo hold and out into the sky, somehow reaching their free cousins above. The investigation revealed an astounding truth. The wild birds had responded to the captives' cries for help, demonstrating a level of interspecies cooperation that stunned wildlife experts. Dr. James Patterson, a leading ornithologist from Cornell University, would later write, "What we witnessed that day challenges everything we thought we knew about avian intelligence and social behavior. These weren't just random birds, this was an organized rescue attempt." Robert Miller was arrested and returned to jail, this time facing federal charges. The rescued exotic birds were rehabilitated at the New England Wildlife Center, where Dorothy Hamilton, the retired ornithologist from the flight, volunteered to assist in their care. Several of the birds formed strong bonds with her, as if somehow knowing she had understood their wild cousins' intentions that day. Margaret Stevens still flies the main skies, though she admits she pays more attention to the birds now. "People think animals are simple creatures," she says, "but that day showed us there's so much we don't understand about them. Sometimes I look down at the coast and wonder if those birds are still out there watching over their own." Captain Sarah Anderson received numerous accolades for her handling of the crisis, but she remains humble about it. "The real heroes that day weren't human," she often says at aviation safety conferences. "Those birds showed us something profound about loyalty and courage. They risked their lives to help their captured kin. How many of us would do the same?" The incident led to increased security measures around wildlife trafficking and inspired several research studies into avian intelligence and social behavior. But perhaps its greatest impact was on the passengers and crew who witnessed it. They came away with a deeper appreciation for the complexity and intelligence of the creatures who share our world. Dorothy Hamilton put it best in her testimony to wildlife authorities. "We humans often think we're the only ones capable of organized rescue missions, of understanding right from wrong. But nature proved us wrong that day. Those birds showed us that compassion and justice aren't uniquely human traits. They're woven into the very fabric of life itself." Today, a small plaque stands in Boothbay Harbor commemorating the incident. It bears a simple inscription. "On this spot in 2024, the birds of Maine reminded us that freedom knows no species, and courage wears many wings."